Channel, Forgotten Heroes. Voice, NUS binaural at rate 0%. Default. Target length, 13 minutes. Almost equals 1800 words at 145 WPM. Style, dramatic restrained, omniscient narrator with occasional present tense placement. Sources cited, Descriceo. Talty, Stefan. Agent Garbo. The brilliant, eccentric secret agent who tricked Hitler and saved D-Day. Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, 2012. Harris, Tomas. Garbo, the spy who saved D-Day. Public Record Office, 2000. Pujol Garcia, Juan and Nigel West. Operation Garbo, the personal story of the most successful spy of World War II. Biteback Publishing, 2011. MI5 Declassified Files KV2/39, 41, UK National Archives. On the 5th of June, 1944, a man sits in a small office in northwest London, tapping out a message on a radio transmitter. The message is addressed to the German intelligence service, the Abwehr, in Madrid. It is marked urgent. It warns that the Allied invasion of Europe is imminent. It gives the location, Normandy. The message is true, every word of it, and the man sending it is a British double agent. He has timed the transmission for 3 o'clock in the morning, late enough that the German radio operator in Madrid has gone to bed. The message will arrive too late to act upon. It will sit in a queue until after the first wave has already hit the beaches. But when the Germans read it in the morning, they will see that their most trusted spy in Britain tried to warn them. His credibility will be unshakable. And that credibility is the weapon. Because 3 days later, he will use it to deliver the lie that changes the course of the war. His name is Juan Pujol Garcia. The British call him Garbo. The Germans call him Alaric. And before the summer of 1944 is over, he will have received the Iron Cross from Adolf Hitler and the Member of the Order of the British Empire from King George VI, both awarded for the same war, for doing exactly opposite things. To understand how a Spanish chicken farmer ended up at the center of the greatest deception in military history, you have to go back to Barcelona in the 1930s. Juan Pujol Garcia was born in 1912, the son of a dye factory owner. He was a quiet boy, unremarkable in school, fond of movies, not particularly ambitious. He drifted through odd jobs, managing a poultry farm, working in a hotel. He had no military training, no intelligence background, no connections to power of any kind. Then the Spanish Civil War arrived. He was conscripted, first by the Republicans, then captured and pressed into service by Franco's nationalists. He served on both sides and despised both. He saw what ideology did when it was given a gun. He watched friends betray friends. He watched men shot against walls for the crime of owning the wrong newspaper. By the time the Civil War ended in 1939, Juan Pujol Garcia had arrived at 2 convictions. He hated fascism, and he hated communism. When Germany invaded Poland 6 months later, he decided, with no training, no contacts, and no plan, that he would offer himself to the British as a spy. He walked into the British embassy in Madrid. He told them he wanted to work against Germany. They looked at this unremarkable Spaniard with no credentials, no languages beyond Spanish and rudimentary French, and they turned him away. He came back. They turned him away again. He came back a 3rd time. They told him not to return. Most men would have taken the hint. Juan Pujol Garcia was not most men. He decided that if the British would not take him, he would create a reason for them to change their minds. He would make himself so valuable that they could not afford to refuse. His plan was breathtaking in its audacity. He would approach the Germans, offer himself as a spy for the Reich, get accepted, and then feed them fabricated intelligence. Garbage dressed up as gold. Once the British saw what he was doing, they would have to recruit him. He walked into the German embassy in Madrid. He told them he was a fanatical supporter of the Nazi cause. He said he had contacts in Britain. He said he could travel there freely. None of this was true. The Germans believed him. In the summer of 1941, Juan Pujol Garcia began his career as a German spy. He was given the codename Alaric, a radio frequency, invisible ink, and instructions to report from England on British military movements. There was one problem. He was not in England. He was in Lisbon. He had never been to England. He did not speak English. His entire knowledge of Britain came from a Blue Guide tourist handbook, a map of the United Kingdom he had bought at a bookshop, and a British railway timetable. From these materials, he began writing intelligence reports. He invented a source in Liverpool, a Portuguese businessman, he told the Abwehr, who had commercial contacts near the docks. He invented a second source in Glasgow, then a third in the West Country. He described troop movements, convoy departures, ammunition stockpiles, all of it fabricated from his hotel room in Lisbon, using the railway timetable to calculate plausible travel times and the tourist guide to describe places he had never seen. The reports were detailed. They were confident. They were, in their particulars, often wrong. He placed a military unit in a town that did not have a military base. He described a convoy leaving Liverpool at a date that made no logistical sense. But the Abwehr believed them. They believed them because the reports had the texture of real intelligence. The small details, the hedged language, the occasional admission of uncertainty. Juan Pujol García was, it turned out, a natural. It took the British nearly a year to notice him. In early 1942, MI5's counterintelligence section began intercepting references to a German agent operating in Britain. An agent they could not identify. He did not appear in any watch list. He had no known contacts. But the Germans were clearly treating his reports as high-grade material. MI5 was alarmed. They began a hunt for the mystery agent. It took months of cross-referencing, decrypted Enigma traffic, and process of elimination before they realized the truth. The agent was not in Britain at all. He was freelancing from Lisbon, and he was making it up. Tomás Harris, a half-Spanish MI5 officer and art dealer, was sent to meet him. Harris was astonished. Here was an amateur, working alone, who had single-handedly convinced the Abwehr that he was running a network of agents across Britain, using nothing but a guidebook and an enormous imagination. MI5 did not arrest him. They recruited him. In April of 1942, Juan Pujol García was brought to London. He was given the codename GARBO because the officers said he was the greatest actor in the world. Under MI5's direction, GARBO's operation expanded from improvisation into architecture. Tomás Harris became his handler. Together, they built a fictitious spy network of 27 subagents. Each had a name, a backstory, a personality, a reason for having access to the information they reported. There was a Welsh nationalist in Swansea, bitter about English rule, who reported on troop movements in the West. There was a Venezuelan businessman in Glasgow who monitored shipping. There was a secretary in the War Office who passed along rumors from Whitehall. None of them existed. The Germans paid salaries to all of them. They sent instructions. They asked for specific reports from specific agents. GARBO would respond in character, sometimes enthusiastic, sometimes cautious, sometimes complaining about expenses. He wrote over 300 letters to Madrid in invisible ink. He transmitted more than 1,000 radio messages. He filed expense reports for agents who were not real people. It was, by any standard, the most elaborate fiction ever sustained across an enemy intelligence service. And all of it was preparation for one single moment. By the spring of 1944, the Allies were planning the invasion of France. The operation was called Overlord. The landing site was the beaches of Normandy. But the entire plan depended on a deception. The Germans had to believe that Normandy was a feint, a diversionary attack, and that the real invasion would come at the Pas-de-Calais, 200 kilometers to the northeast, where the English Channel was narrowest. The deception was called Operation Fortitude. It involved fake tank battalions made of inflatable rubber. It involved a phantom army group under General George Patton, the commander the Germans feared most, staged in southeast England, pointed directly at Calais. And at its center was GARBO. In the weeks before D-Day, GARBO's fictitious agents began reporting. The Welsh nationalist reported unusual troop concentrations in Kent. The Venezuelan businessman noted landing craft being assembled in the Thames estuary. The secretary whispered about Patton being given a major command. Each report was a thread. Together, they wove a picture that the German high command found irresistible. Normandy was a trick. Calais was the real target. The main force had not yet moved. Then came June the 6th. The Allies landed at Normandy. For a few hours, the Germans wavered. Hitler's generals asked permission to release the panzer divisions, the armored reserves held back near Calais, and send them to Normandy to push the Allies into the sea. If those panzers had moved, the invasion might have failed. On June the 9th, 3 days after D-Day, GARBO sent his most important message. He told the Abwehr that he had consulted with his agents across Britain. He told them the picture was now clear. Normandy, he said, was indeed a diversionary operation. The real assault, larger, more powerful, would come at the Pas-de-Calais within days. Eisenhower was holding his strongest forces in reserve. If Germany moved its panzers away from Calais to reinforce Normandy, it would fall into the trap. The message reached Hitler's headquarters by midnight. At 1:12 in the morning on June the 10th, the order came down from the Führer himself. The panzer divisions would stay at Calais. They would not reinforce Normandy. They stayed there for 7 weeks. By the time the German command realized there was no second invasion coming, the Allies had landed over 1 million men on the beaches of Normandy. The breakout was unstoppable. After the war, historians tried to calculate how many lives GARBO saved. The estimates are unreliable. War does not yield clean arithmetic. But most agree on this. If the panzer reserves had reached Normandy in the first 72 hours, the invasion would have been, at best, a catastrophe of attrition. At worst, a second Dunkirk. Juan Pujol García prevented that. Not with a weapon, not with a battalion, with ink and radio waves and a gift for telling people exactly the lie they wanted to believe. The British gave him the MBE in December of 1944. The Germans gave him the Iron Cross, the only person in history known to have received both. After the war, he disappeared. He faked his own death in 1949, a final deception, and moved to Venezuela under a false name. He ran a bookshop in Caracas. He raised a family. He told no one what he had done. In 1984, a British historian named Nigel West tracked him down. The world learned, for the first time, that GARBO had survived the war. He returned to Normandy in 1984, 40 years after D-Day. He stood on the bluffs above the beaches. He looked out at the sand where the landing craft had come in, the sand that his words had helped keep undefended. He said very little. He died in Caracas on October 10, 1988. He was 76 years old. The bookshop owner, the chicken farmer, the greatest double agent of the 20th century. A man who walked into an embassy 3 times, was turned away 3 times, and decided to change the course of a war by himself. If this story moved you, subscribe to follow the Untold Front. New stories every week.